called for calm.
We are closely monitoring the emerging cases of swine flu in the United States. And this is obviously a cause for concern and requires a heightened state of alert. But it's not a cause for alarm.
The virus quickly reached Europe as well. The first confirmed case was a young man in the Spanish town of Almanza. He had just returned from Mexico.
Swine flu has risen to about 300. That means nearly 200,000 students could spend days at home. NPR's Larry Abramson reports.
Decisions on school closings are made locally, but officials say they are following guidelines from the federal government and are closing schools when there is a probable case of swine flu. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano says those guidelines also say students should stay at home.
If a school is closed, it is not closed so that kids can go out to the mall or go out into the community at large. They're being asked to stay home because the entire purpose is to limit communication within the community.
A single school in Seattle was added to the list, as well as all the schools in Park City, Utah. In Huntsville, Alabama, officials closed 3 entire school districts and sent 51,000 students home.
Once more, I've asked the health minister in Berlin to speak to her counterparts in the individual federal states. We must ensure that we really do have the necessary stocks of medication at the regional level, so that we're well prepared for every eventuality.
EU health ministers also met to discuss the crisis and agreed to exchange information about the spread of the virus.
My name is Regina Sweet. I am a school teacher. Well, I was until people became ill and all schools were closed. In fact, all public buildings were closed permanently. The fact is, very few people survived the virus. The few that did were afraid to get out of their homes. Eventually, a lot of people died in their houses, afraid to go out and get food. The virus spread quickly. At first, they call it the avian flu, then the swine flu, the H1N1 virus, Hong Kong strain, Mexican strain, Marburg improved virus, etc. Others thought it was a new type of bacteria that had evolved from combining different types of viruses, including Ebola and the HIV viruses. The truth is that not too many of the scientists lived long enough to prove their theories. People in politics started to point fingers at other people who soon also were dead. The illness started as cold symptoms with nasal congestion, weakness, and some cough. In the course of a few days, illnesses would increase with symptoms of nausea, vomiting, and high fever. Within a few days of the epidemic, most people went to the emergency rooms. Eventually, ERs had to be closed since nurses and doctors were dying as well. All patients that contracted the disease were dead by the second week from multi-system failure.
Saying it was in keeping with measures to prevent the spread of the H1N1 virus. The issue has caused a rift between Mexico and China. Mexico has now sent a plane to Beijing to bring back its citizens.
Some 300 people remain under quarantine at this Hong Kong hotel after a Mexican guest tested positive for swine flu. Dozens of Mexican citizens are being kept in hotels and other sites in China. Mexican authorities say most of them don't even have symptoms of the H1N1 virus. China says it's a necessary measure, but the Mexican government calls it discrimination.
It seems unfair to me that after we were honest and transparent with the world, some countries or places are taking discriminatory measures because of ignorance and misinformation. Because the truth is, they are discriminating against Mexicans.
168 deaths there may be flu-related. From Mexico City, Michael O'Boyle reports.
U.S. health experts have now spent days analyzing hundreds of the cases of the mysterious new flu in Mexico, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the outbreak may not be as worrying as first thought. Residents in the capital were breathing a bit easier, even if it was from behind face masks. Health officials said the number of new serious cases was dropping, and the government said a ban on big public gatherings has helped control the spread of the new virus. The lockdown has brought much of Mexico to a standstill. Government offices, many factories, and other businesses are closing under a presidential order that is extending the May Day long weekend through next Wednesday. The president asked Mexicans to stay home and stop the spread of the virus. For NPR News, I'm Michael O'Boyle in Mexico City.
The White House is using Facebook, MySpace, and Twitter to help spread information about the outbreak. President Obama also addressed the flu in his weekly radio and internet address. NPR's Scott Horsley reports.
President Obama says his administration is acting quickly and aggressively to combat swine flu. Although so far the virus has not proven as potent or as deadly in the U.S. as in neighboring Mexico, Mr. Obama says it's better to take action now and wait and possibly face more serious consequences later.
As our scientists and researchers learn more information about this virus every day, the guidance we offer will likely
Damit sich die
change.
Grippe nicht noch weiter
What will not
ausbreitet,
change
bringen
is the fact
Angestellte
that
der
we'll be making
Gesundheitsbehörde
every
Medikamente.
recommendation based
Der
on the
betroffene
best
Patient
science
liegt im
possible.
Krankenhaus. Sein Zustand ist stabil. Es handelt sich um eine Person, die gestern mit der China Eastern Airlines von Mexiko über Shanghai nach Hongkong flog und gegen 13 Uhr ankam. Seitdem sind die Behörden alarmiert, noch mehr als schon zuvor. Hongkong dürfte aber gut für den Kampf gegen eine neue Seuche gerüstet sein. Hier nahm vor 6 Jahren die Atemwegserkrankung SARS ihren Anfang. Gerüstet scheint man auch in Deutschland. Das zumindest betonen die Experten immer wieder. Dass sich zum ersten Mal ein Mensch angesteckt hat.
I grew up on a farm, so I had a good idea of how to grow my own food. I spent time gathering berries, nuts, wildflowers, grasses, fruit, and even some mushrooms and lichen. Then it occurred to me that the reason I did not get sick was because I did not eat any processed foods or meat. The virus had also wiped out all cattle and most domesticated animals. I'd been eating beans, rice, vegetables, and fruit for years.
Please be seated. Before we begin tonight, I just want to provide everyone with a few brief updates on some of the challenges we're dealing with right now. First, we are continuing to closely monitor the emergency cases of the H1N1 flu virus throughout the United States. As I said this morning, this is obviously a very serious situation, and every American should know that their entire government is taking the utmost precautions and preparations. Our public health officials have recommended that schools with confirmed or suspected cases of this flu strongly consider temporarily closing. And if more schools are forced to close, we've recommended that both parents and businesses think about contingency plans if their children do have to stay home. I've requested an immediate $1.5 billion in emergency funding from Congress to support our ability to monitor and track this virus and to build our supply of antiviral drugs and other equipment. And we will also ensure that those materials get to where they need to be as quickly as possible. And finally, I've asked every American to take the same steps you would take to prevent any other flu.
Members of the Senate Homeland Security Committee repeatedly asked Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano why the U.S. hasn't closed the border with Mexico to keep the flu outbreak from spreading. It was a question Connecticut Independent Joseph Lieberman, the committee's chair, said he'd been getting too.
I think what you're hearing today from members of the committee is what we're not only thinking, but hearing from our...
From NPR News in New York, I'm Ira Flato with Science Friday. We have been hearing a lot about the flu this week, so it's time for a reality check. For example, if the flu is normally spread face-to-face, why are we washing our hands so much? If this strain is proving to be weak, causing mostly mild symptoms,
I spent several years alone until one day I went out to check on the fields and I saw someone. Are you symptom-free?
I have been for 7 years since my parents died.
Same here. Do you have any family left?
No, they died fast. I thought I'd have to live the rest of my life without talking to anyone.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Did you take any medicine?
No, just what nature has to offer. What about you?
I didn't either.
I have a theory about why I wasn't affected when everybody else around me was dying.
What's that?
I never ate meat.
Me neither, except a couple months ago when I caught a rabbit.
My theory is that wild animals are not affected. It was the ones that were fed genetically altered grain and ground meat from other infected animals. It was like mad cow disease at a larger scale.
Do you think there are more survivors?
If my theory is correct, people who are vegetarians would have survived. There must be more of us.
I'm tired of being alone. We could look for people in the city.
We'd probably have more luck looking in the farmland. I have an old truck, we could use it.
Should we?
We probably should go look for other survivors. If you want to come with me, we can get started. Are you okay? Are you okay?